How's it going, everybody? Your Big Gold Belt Wrestling podcast is live and on the air with a big show for you tonight. We got to go back to Chicago to start things out and talk about AEW All Out, highlights of the show, and did they take things a little too far in the violence department? We're going to talk about that. Viewer discretion may be advised. From there, the PWI 500 dropped. You know there's going to be thoughts on that. And last but not least, TV deals are happening. But what is the state of TV in a world where streaming is quickly becoming king? All that and more, folks. Get ready. Your Big Gold Belt Wrestling podcast starts right now.
Big Gold Belt, 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 Big Gold Belt. All I really want is that Big Gold Belt, 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 Big Gold Belt. All I really need that Big Gold Belt.
How is it going, everyone? We are glad you are here with us tonight on this fine Thursday night. Your Big Gold Belt Wrestling podcast is live and joining you 8 p.m. as we do each and every week. Thank you for being here to talk some pro wrestling and who knows what else for the next hour with us. Got three of the guys tonight here with you. Not quite the entire crew, but a good amount. So we got Damian G to my left down the Lone Star State representing the NWO for life this evening. I am here in the middle. I am Will. And to my right, the Giant Crab Jamal is here tonight. We are ready to get into all kinds of stuff. This is going to be an interesting show because we got a variety of topics to cover. It's not just all going to be, we're going to have some media talk. We're going to talk wrestling. We're going to talk rankings, all kinds of stuff going on. So should be a fun show tonight. So thank you for tuning in. Guys, how are you all doing this week?
It's 85 degrees, so I'm comfortable. It's not 105.
That's nice. About what it is here.
Yeah. I mean, that's actually pretty brisk for North Texas around the time
exactly.
of year.
There we go. There we go. As we head into the fall months, I'm a little get down in the 70s. That's what I'm waiting for right now. We were a little cooler earlier in the week, but it's heated back up. So we will see. So let's rewind to this past weekend with AEW All Out in Chicago. Their second of their back-to-back major shows coming off of Wembley, following up in Chicago, and an interesting show they had Saturday night. I saw most of it. I did not see all of it, but I saw a good chunk of it. And Lord knows there's been a lot of discussion about it since it happened. Before we get into all the, the dramas surrounding it and people have opinions on things that happened on the show, I guess let's talk about the show in general first. Looking at it right now, trying to think what jumped out at me. What was the stuff I was most into of what I saw? It might be that darn main event. It might very well be that steel cage lights out main event of what I saw, because I didn't watch Bryan Danielson, because I'll be damned if I'm watching a Jack Perry match. And Mercedes and Hikaru Shida was bumpy, as her matches have tended to be lately. So, yeah, I don't know. I think I'm going to go with the cage match. Just because we talked about last week about the fire burning down the house and all that drama. And I thought they did a good job of doing a match that you knew was going to be ridiculous. You knew it was going to be out there. I guess the question we'll get into later is, did they go too far out there? But in general, I thought it was, I liked what they did for the most part in that, in the main event of All Out. I don't know, Damian, you get in here. Thoughts on AEW All Out?
So I want to take everyone back to last week where we were kind of discussing, was this a one match pay-per-view, meaning that it was so quick, not a lot of build after the previous pay-per-view. And by all accounts, it was a one match pay-per-view for me, because you're right. Well, I was not trying to watch a Jack Perry. I don't care how you want to dress up Jack Perry. If he's in the jungle, if he's the scapegoat, I don't care if he's sacrificing a demon on air. He's not interesting. Okay. So the fact that we had this grudge match, blood feud, burning down the house, that brought the attention for me. And as someone who also is a women's wrestling advocate, small asterisk for the street fight between Willow and Chris Statlander. I thoroughly enjoyed that because Chris got a win, which I was thoroughly surprised that Statlander actually won that match. But overall, I think what really brought to my attention is something we talked about before the show, and we'll get into it more. It's the level of extreme, that we saw in that match. I never thought in 2024, I would never have thought a hypodermic needle would have made its way into a cage match. Because I grew up in the crack days, the heroin and crack days. So I was like, oh, so we just got hypodermic needles in matches again. Okay, great. But I will still say, even though I watched that match back twice, the cage match, still a little disappointed. A little disappointed that we had to go that extreme to get people talking when we discussed last week that AEW predicated themselves on being the wrestling show. So now we're ECW, circa 2024. And as much as I love old school ECW, my palate has changed. So I know a few people agree with me on that, but that's how I looked at the show overall. It was just okay.
So the long and short of it is that I didn't watch the show because of the immediate reaction after the show. I did peek at some highlights, but to the point of the card, there wasn't anything on the show that made me go out of my way to watch it. Definitely not something that was going to sit me down for 5 hours to sit through this. The way you feel about Jack Perry is exactly how I feel about Chris Statlander. I wish she were better, but for her to be better at something, she would actually be good at anything. And I haven't seen that. Like, she hasn't reached the bottom where I can say it's only up from here. So, damn. With that said, the cage match, that's the thing that everybody's talking about and how extreme it was and all this good stuff too. It's a relative term, because if I were to ask you, and actually, you know what? I will ask you guys, what's the most extreme wrestling match you've ever seen? Now,
barbed wire explosion
thinking
match
about
with
it,
Terry Funk. Yeah. A Terry Funk match that had explosions. Yeah.
Okay. Will?
The first thing my head was going to was the crazy Japanese stuff with FMW, with the
Onita.
barbed wire, the explosions, Pogo with the sickle stabbing people. So stuff along those lines from the 90s. And Lord knows there's been crazier stuff since with Glass and all this stuff.
Right.
There's tons of deathmatch stuff out there. So
right.
We know that genre very well.
Yeah, right. So my point is that you guys of a particular age, 40 plus, myself included, harkens back to something easily 20-ish years ago. Mid-90s FMW is a good place to start.
Good point.
Right. There isn't a person under 25 that knows what I'm talking about. So for people to say that this is the craziest, most insane, violent, gory, visceral thing that I've ever seen, then you're probably under 25.
Yeah.
Because realistically, that it just, as you say that your palate has changed or shuffled around a little bit, I don't think that there's too many people, unless you are an actual enthusiast of death matches or hardcore matches, and you've taken your time to go back through the history and look at what it was and up to what it is now. Then, for me, from what I've seen of the cage match was meh. But again, I'm basing this on my experience of bootleg tapes of FMW from the mid-90s.
Right.
Or the Cage of Death tournaments from the early 2000s. Or the Tournament of Death in ICW. Or Time Bomb Pro Wrestling up there in North Dakota. Those sick bastards are insane. I'm thinking of guys like Schlack. I'm thinking of guys like Nick Cage. I'm thinking of guys like Atsushi Onita. I'm thinking of Cactus Jack versus. I'm thinking of Scorpion, casket, barbed wire, double helmet.
Piranha coffin full of piranhas.
Exactly. and for those that think that this isn't like hyperbole, it is not. It's real. Look it up.
Go look it up. Yeah.
Right. So coming from that plane into a thing like, oh, he stapled himself. Okay. Like, oh, the hypodermic needle with air in it. Oh, okay. the things that we know that are safe, relatively speaking, safe, quote, air quotes, that's visceral and like done to gain that reaction. I think the needle through the cheek, where there is no muscle, there are no tendons, it's just flesh, obviously looks more gross than it is. It won't even draw blood. It's the cheek. But it's that image that has people all weirded out because it's needles, and nobody likes needles, just like nobody likes a dentist. And here we are. So I think the match was very safe. And even if it wasn't, even if it actually wasn't, they prefaced it by saying we're going to symbolically turn off the lights. The following match is not sanctioned by AEW. Not necessarily viewer discretion at your own, advised. However, ain't on us. If you, as a company, we have absolved ourselves of liability. To do a thing.
That's part of the draw.
Yes.
Now, I don't know if legally that holds water or not. If somebody pulls out, if we get a Vic Grimes moment, if we get a mass transit moment, look it up. But it's it's that type of thing where it's still within, for me, it's in the realm of wrestling. And then, of course, you could argue that, like, AEW is it's the wrestler's wrestler. It's the underground, type of indies with a budget and stuff like that. And it's just like, well, yeah, when they started, and we talked about how last week they're not in that place where they started, and they're not looking back to going back to that place where they started. So the match was very safe. It wasn't necessarily what I thought it was, and for people's reactions to be, oh my God, did they go too far? I can understand why they would say that, because I said the same thing when I saw the time bomb explosion double hell death match, where the bomb went off and the ring physically exploded, or they replaced the ropes with barbed wire, or a bunch of different crazy shit that we've seen over the past 30 years. So for a lot of people, as their audience does skew younger than WWE's, it's not surprising that a lot of the folks that are immediately taking to social media and go, oh my God, this is the sickest thing I've ever seen. It does ring. That's how we know we're old. We're just going like, gather around, young buck. Gather around the lemon tree. Let me tell you a story about, Masato Tanaka. So I think that's what it is. I think it's a little bit of, this is that thing for those people. And, and obviously it's not a young or old thing, because if you just don't know about Japanese wrestling, you've never consumed it, then this is the craziest thing you've ever seen. So there is that too. But for me, the match was fine. It definitely wasn't something that I was needing, and that's what I said last week, because they had their match. They drank blood. That shit was wild. What could they do to top that? And that's the question that we had for last week. And honestly, nothing in this match did that for me, considering what they actually did. And then, of course, the other bit of business is Danielson getting jumped by Mr. Clean and smothered with the shopping bag, because, the shopping bags are just as dangerous as those damn kendo sticks. And that's another thing where it's just like, oh no, the neck. Oh no, he's being
suffocation.
He has a
suffocation.
And it's also another thing too. If you are specifically triggered, then maybe that's not something. That's obviously something that's going to affect you specifically. But for me, meh. No, that was. They're not going to kill him. They have a pay-per-view to run to build. So they're not going to kill Brian until Wrestle Dream. Then worry. He may actually die in the ring.
I think you make a good point about, a lot of these kids watching. For a lot of them, the craziest thing they might have ever seen is, Mick Foley flying off a Hell in a Cell. Something to that extent, where it's like a big drop like that of some sort, as opposed to more gory stuff like this. Now, another thing on this show was...
Or Darby Allin may be the most bananas thing they've ever seen.
Yeah. True. Another thing on this show is there were 3 instances. We talked about the main event with the hypodermic needle as the big thing at the end of the show with the needle through the cheek. the trash bag incident with Jon Moxley and Bryan Danielson to close Bryan Danielson's match with Jack Perry. And then before that, you had the Chicago street fight with Statlander and Willow, where they brought in light tubes and tacks and all that kind of stuff. So there were 3 kind of like extreme matches on this show. It wasn't just one moment of extreme. It was 3 moments of extremes. I saw some people being like, was it overboard in that respect, where they didn't just do it once, they did it 3 times. So how much can one thing stand out when you're going this heavy with it all on one show in one night?
Makes sense, but my counter to that would be that was only 2 matches out of 12 total. That's number one.
Right.
And you could argue that the second match doesn't count because it wasn't sanctioned. You had every right to turn it off. They gave you an out.
Right.
So if you want to say one sanctioned match, it would have been the Chicago street fight, and contextually the street fight made sense. Close friends, bitter enemies, blah, 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 women's wrestling. I'm not sure what the problem is. And it's also, the card was booked. So it's not like you don't know what you're going to get. It's not like this is a regular singles match, 10-minute time limit to a pinfall, and then all of a sudden they're hammering each other with ice picks. You know, I mean, Rick Knox is a bad ref, but goddamn, he's not letting that go. So that I think contextually it makes sense within the scope of the build. The street fight, I mean, it's a Chicago street fight. Not that any town USA street fight is any different, but it's a Chicago street fight for this blood feud. Then you had the unsanctioned lights out steel cage match in their blood feud. And then you had the shock of the night, if you care, Danielson being jumped by the Goon Squad. So you have a major heel turn. You had 2 matches that make sense, and one was unsanctioned. So if you had to leave, then go. What's the problem?
So is this their new identity now, where they're switching to a little bit more of the extreme elements that we grew up with, and like you said, maybe the youngsters don't know? So this is like they're kind of pivoting into more extreme, for them, matches, because WWE is becoming a little bit more wrestly and less sports entertaining. So now to keep an identity different from WWE, now they have to go circa ECW on TNN.
Well, the password is ruthless aggression.
There it is.
So I mean, so I do think to that point, it may be a bit of an identity shift, not necessarily swap. I wouldn't say that WWE is becoming more wrestly. Raw going to 2 hours, and we can definitely talk about that next week.
Miracles can happen.
Yeah, what that looks like. Miracle. Climate change working its way again. I don't know what that looks like as far as WWE goes. I don't think they're going to be putting on these 10-point matches with like 75 false finishes in 8 minutes. That's not their style. With AEW, though, a lot of these guys do have the creative freedom and the athleticism to match. So you do get something that's a little bit more avant-garde in the beginning. Then, of course, it is still, they need to attract the casuals. So that is a thing that is a thing that needs to happen as well. So I think the AEW, as we said it before, as we were breaking down the card last week, this card, if you were interested, was a good mix of things. They had your hardcore matches, they had the good technical matches, they had the British match, they had the 4-way match, they had a bunch of different matches, and then there are 4 matches in the pre-show that we didn't even know about at the time that turned out to be a ton of multi-man matches. 3 of them were trios matches and one more tag. So it's still the idea of the variety. And that's if there's any tie that binds it all with AEW, it is variety. They're not just giving you this one aesthetic that we can paint as WWE style. You will see something different, which can be polarizing, because obviously as the criticisms come out about the pay-per-view, it's unfortunately detracting from the rest of the card. But is it detracting from the rest of the card, or is the rest of the card falling flat, as we predicted last week?
Yeah.
So where does that balance out? But either way, I still, I got to credit AEW for bringing some variety, even though they're moving in a centrist way.
Okay. All right. For me, I think the biggest thing when it was all said and done, as far as like these 3 big spots they did, the trash bag was probably most shocking to me. Just as I remember in '89 when Terry Funk did the same thing to Ric Flair and put a trash bag
That's
on his head,
right.
and they never showed it again because TBS got in so much damn trouble at the time for showing what people took as like a suffocation thing, and kids watching and playing with plastic bags was too dangerous a thing in the '80s. So it was like one and done. They had to like scrub that shit and never show it again. Nowadays, it's kind of like, all that wrestling shit's fake. Ain't no one even worried about it. So the trash bag thing immediately took me back to that. Like, oh my God, I remember when this happened back in the day. And it was a really, really big deal. The needle, I think the needle is graphically more gruesome to most people because, like y'all mentioned, a lot of people don't like needles. I'm not as crazy about the needle spot just because to me it comes across so clumsy and contrived. It's like, a hypodermic needle, and you got, I don't know. It's just way more involved to use a hypodermic needle as opposed to a bag that you just got to put over someone's head. So of the two, I like the bag better in my opinion.
Well, you know what it reminds me of? The needle spot in general reminds me of like the Boogeyman. It wasn't necessarily that the worms that he would bring out hurt or did anything or whatever it was, but they were live worms. Right. And this shit was gross. It was the whole gimmick. That was the whole point of the deal. It wasn't about anything else other than it being just absolutely gross.
Right.
And so it's not a matter of whether the needle spot hurt. If anything, that just was something to just look gross. And I think for the people that are criticizing it, especially those that know the wrestling, and some pretty, decent names within the community of wrestling, definitely those on the inside went, this is gross. I don't want to see this. It's interesting because of the fact that that you've seen worse, and that you've seen some things that are aggressively bad. Now, granted, I think there was an unprotected chair shot in there in the somewhere in there in the match as well, and that is kind of a thing.
After the needle went in, that was the finish. A chair shot to the head after he gave him the needle.
Yeah. I mean that's a thing that shouldn't happen. But it's also like in this match, it's an unsanctioned lights out match.
Right.
That's the point of it. That's why they only do it once or twice a year.
It can't just be a regular match. There's got to be something extra to it to warrant it being a lights out match.
Because realistically, before the chair shots, the ref should have stopped the match because, that's what the rules say. There are no rules. It's lights out. So it is something that makes sense in the context as the match was presented. If it were gross to you, I can understand that. That's also the point of it. Should they do it again? Well, they're not going to do it tomorrow. They're not going to do it on a Rampage. So I do think for what it was, and it's also on pay-per-view. If you paid $50,
good point.
This is on TBS.
Yeah, this isn't weekly TV. This is why this is a pay-per-view, because you're gonna push the envelope a lot more. And for all of those people that are saying that, oh my God, they did too far, this is actually sickening, I can't deal with this. I really believe that those damn apron spots hurt a lot more than that needle to the cheek.
I agree with you. Yeah.
True that.
So I think that a lot of people, and it's just indicative of the times that we live in, for better or worse, that and it also points to the allure of wrestling in general. I mean, yes, we are sitting here as fans talking about wrestling and how it makes us feel in general. People were fucking moved to the point that they had to yell from the mountaintops, "This shit is gross. I don't want to see it." I thought it was fake. I don't care about that. This is gross. But I thought, it can't hurt you. I mean, this is the spot. It was planned. It was working to the match. I don't care about that.
I don't care about all that. Yeah.
Get it off my TV. Get it off my pay-per-view that I paid.
Get off my
$50
pay-per-view.
for.
Right. Get off the money I paid to
Why'd you
watch
make
this.
me pay for this and give me this thing that's
How
too
dare
violent?
you?
How dare you?
You told me this was unsanctioned. How dare it be violent?
Right.
All right. Any other thoughts on that show before we move on? Anything else in All Out?
I'll just say what I said from day 2 with Mercedes being in AEW. The
Mhm.
bloom was off the rose after that first or second promo. It hasn't gotten any better at all.
And this is something that we're definitely going to revisit in the future, the very near future. What do you do with Mercedes?
Yeah.
I mean, she's the boss. She's the CEO. She's
Of nothing.
some kind of mogul, I guess.
MLMs.
Why isn't she vying for the women's championship? Like, it doesn't. I've never understood that, And then, of course, the matches themselves. I don't know if it's her. I don't know if it's the dance partners that she's had. I don't know if it's a combination of both. When you have to take the Twitter to kind of, temper down the emotions after your pay-per-view match,
Yeah.
and say like, "Hey, I'm not apologizing, but I understand."
Yeah.
That
ain't good.
That ain't it.
Yeah.
And that's what puzzled
No.
me, was because you supposedly was working with the original women's ace of AEW in
Goddamn
Hikaru
right.
Shida. And you still couldn't pull out a really stellar pay-per-view match with Shida of all people.
Right.
And I was a diehard Sasha Banks NXT guy, right? Even of all the horsewomen, I was saying, okay, she was 1, Charlotte was 2, Bailey whatsoever.
Mhm.
Now I'm over here like, was she just protected in WWE because of the dance partner she had? Like we were saying, because she had Charlotte, because she had Becky and Bailey. Was she not as good as we thought, or at least I thought she was?
Well, okay, that's a fair question. Fair question. But I say not necessarily as a counter to that. Is she 100% after the knee injury?
Yeah.
Didn't think about that. Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm
True.
not going to say that, because we never really saw her outside of WWE, and then she gets hurt,
Right.
takes a year off, does a couple, spot matches here and there, and now she's in AEW.
Yeah.
So we really haven't seen her do too much, unfortunately, outside of WWE before the knee injury. And I wonder if that really is something that's hampered her more than she's letting on, or that we even believe. Maybe she needs to change, not necessarily her style, because I'm not a wrestler. I can't tell you how to do it.
Right.
But I think if you are in a situation where A, you're 2 years older from when you left, and then B, you have a major knee injury that took 9 months off your career, then you got to do something different. Something, because, and we only see the results. We don't see the work. So, just a hypothetical, but I wonder if that's something that comes into play.
Good point, because that has not been that long in that many matches since she's come back, and like you said, before she got that knee injury. So we did not get a whole lot of time to see a Mercedes Moné outside of the WWE system before the big injury.
Exactly. And the only thing that we said before she got hurt was, please don't use that finisher again.
That's exactly what we said.
Please, yeah, it's got to go. Somebody talk to the girl and get rid of that thing, because it hasn't worked from the beginning, and here we are now, and it still ain't working. It just is not. It is too complicated a move. It ain't. That ain't it.
Yeah.
Go back to the base.
And she can't do it on people taller than her.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's also the problem too. So either way, it's been an interesting go of it for Mercedes after WWE, but obviously in an alternative universe somewhere, Mercedes without that knee injury, I wonder how she fares.
There you go. All right, here we go. We are going to go to halftime. When we come back, we will have the Indie Spotlight. We will take a look at the PWI 500 after that, and then we're going to get into some media rights talk with AEW's TV deal and the landscape of current sports television and streaming, because times are a-changing. So stay with us, folks. Your Big Old Belt Wrestling Podcast will be back right after this.
A little birdie told me, everybody, that you may be interested in doing some sponsorship and advertising opportunities with us here at Big Gold Belt Media. You know what? You might as well, because we are the golden standard for all of your media needs. Why would you want to go anywhere else? Besides, all of your pre-roll ads, your mid-roll ads, as well as your on-air reads are going to be done by me, Damian G. Yeah, professional broadcaster, Damian G. We do all types of social media promotions. That means your podcast, your IG, your Facebook, your Twitter, and your business website all get shouted out on our network here at Big Gold Belt Media, where we cover wrestling, movies, comics, and more. And you can find out more information and make those inquiries, kids, because, limited time offer here at Big Gold Belt Group at gmail.com. Again, that is Big Gold Belt Group at gmail.com. Why would you want to go anywhere else? I wouldn't. Well, I work here, but I still wouldn't even if I didn't. So again, Big Gold Belt Media for all your sponsorship and advertising opportunities, your podcast, your IG, your Facebook, your Twitter, all of your social media platforms, as well as any business website you want us to promote on our show. Big Gold Belt Group at gmail.com. And let them know Damon G sent you.
Thanks for joining us here tonight, folks, on the Big Gold Belt Wrestling Podcast. When we come back from halftime, we like checking out what's happening on the indie scene. So here's Giant Crab with this week's Big Gold Belt Podcast Indie Wrestling Spotlight.
And this week we are going out to Portland, Oregon for Roseland 9, and it's a triple header, not triple header, sorry. It's a triple branded show between Deadlock Pro Wrestling, West Coast Pro Wrestling, and Prestige Wrestling.
Oh.
And yeah, so all three of them are coming together for a big ass show out there in Portland, Oregon at the Roseland Theater. It's Roseland 9, number 8, Northwest 6th Avenue in Portland, Oregon. That show is September 29th, 2024, in a couple weeks. One of the big things, you get your tickets at prestigewrestling.net. One of the big things about the show, they're having a meet and greet with FTR. That meet and greet starts at 5:30. Show starts at 6, and it goes from 6 to 9 p.m. out there in Portland, Oregon. FTR, Dijak, Mustafa Ali, Jordan Grace, Calvin Tankman, Trevor Lee, Kevin Blackwood, Adam Priest, Callie Ray, the Midnight Heat, and so much more are going to be out there for Roseland 9 out there in Portland, Oregon for Prestige, Deadlock, and West Coast Pro. I know that WrestleCon is a big deal, sure. And the other thing that they do around WrestleMania weekend, but this is one of the bigger single shows that I've seen all year. So if you're on the West Coast, hell, even if you're not, and you want to be in the Portland area, you got 2 weeks to get out there to Portland, Oregon, Roseland 9 in Portland for Prestige, Deadlock, and West Coast Pro, September 29th at the Roseland Theater in Portland, Oregon. And that's the Indie Spotlight for this week.
There we go, folks. Each and every week, keeping us informed with what's happening on the indie scene on our halftime segment. Always good to hear what's going on with the Indie Wrestling Spotlight. All right. It is that time of year. Every year we go through this.
Boy.
Yay.
Not so much us gets in a tizzy about this because we're old and we've been through this plenty of times. But Lord knows folks get all in their feelings over about what we're about to talk about. So we're going to do our little cursory thumbnail glance at things and see what jumps out at us because it's that time of the year. It is PWI 500 time. Yes, sir. So let me pull this up. We'll quickly look at the top 10. And from there, we can look at, what else ever else jumps out at us in the list of names there. Because it is a big old list of names as
500.
Yes, 500 as it always is. So before I start reading off the names, let me quickly deal with the subject of the criteria. This comes up every year. So the way they work this, remember, this is kayfabe. This is kayfabe as kayfabe can be. Win-loss record, championships won, quality of competition, major feuds, prominence within a wrestler's promotion, and overall wrestling ability. The evaluation period is August 1st, 2023 to July 31st, 2024. So August to July is what we're looking at. There's also a clause in here having to do with activity. So and they word this very specifically. So here's an activity. Minimum 10 singles non-tag matches total, or barring this, 6 such matches in separate months. So a certain tribal chief doesn't make the list because of this and some other random people. But a kayfabe list without Roman Reigns, I'm just going to say I'm not so sure about that. That just, I don't know. That's my opinion on that, though. But with that said, let's take a look at the top 10. Let's take a look at the top 10. We will go from 10 down to 1, and then we can take it from there. So coming in at number 10 is Mystico. 9, your World Heavyweight Champion, Gunther, from Monday Night Raw. John Moxley, Giant Crab's favorite, is number
His favorite
8.
wrestler.
Following that, another AEW star, number 7, is MJF, Maxwell Jacob Friedman. Number 6, former World Heavyweight Champion Damian Priest. Number 5, New Japan Champion Tetsuya Naito. Number 4, Seth freaking Rollins. Number 3, hot as a rocket right now in AEW, Will Ospreay. Number 2, your AEW champion, Swerve Strickland. And last but not least, at number 1, your current WWE champion, American Nightmare, Cody Rhodes. That is our top 10 to go with there. Damian, I will go to you first. Any thoughts on the top 10 of the PWI 500?
I mean, I invalidate this entire list because Roman Reigns isn't on it. So that's neither here nor there. But if I have to look at it now, good on Damian Priest, bring number 6. And I'm not saying it because I'm biased because of the name. We all remember the Punishment Martinez days, right?
Yes.
And he's come a long way from no-selling catching luchadors on planchas, right? So the fact that not only did WWE invest in him, going all the way back to his NXT days when he came in as the Archer of Infamy, to see him even on the top 10 shows that attribute to Judgment Day, when we all thought they were dead in the water after Edge left, with the Spooky Wookies, good on him. He was their World Heavyweight Champion, even though it was done through the briefcase, but at least they trusted him enough to win the briefcase. And he's still in high-profile feuds, admittedly the second fiddle to Rhea Ripley. But from where he was a decade ago to now, I'll even say 5 years ago, good on Damian Priest, good on a fellow New Yorker and a fellow guy named Damian, even though the general populace still may not be sold on him for whatever reason. Just good to see. Mystico in the 10th. If this is the same Mystico as Sin Cara, you're still doing it. And lo and behold, you leave WWE and all of a sudden now you don't botch a goddamn thing. So you know what? Kudos to you, sir, for rekindling your love of wrestling. If this is indeed the same Mystico and not another person taking over that. Seth Rollins just continues to be steady. Swerve Strickland, congrats. I remember, the Shaka Khan Ain't Nobody days, in Tournament of Death when he was doing CZW, getting glass picked out of his shoulders. And now the only extreme he does is needles into the cheek. Then you know what? He's shown that he is a workhorse and a company can trust him with their company. I know a lot of people kind of weren't really sold on that. And I know for a time I thought even myself as a Shane Strickland fan was like, are they really going to back him? So what this list is really showing me in American wrestling is that aside from codiferous roads, there's some backing here from people who may not be, number one in your hearts and number one on the charts. It's good to see that we have an eclectic group, even though John Moxley's on there. I'm sorry, Jamal. He brings something to the table. It may not be what Crab likes, but he brings something to the AEW faithful. And good on Naito for still being in the top 10.
So, Roman's not on the list. And I can understand why, if you're going on how many matches that he's done.
Correct. Because
Roman's on the Brock Lesnar schedule. He's on the John Cena schedule. Okay, cool. But he's in the hottest feud in WWE in the past maybe year or 2 or 3.
I would say, probably safe to say, the biggest name in wrestling today currently. I mean,
and if
WrestleMania main eventer, how do you not have him on the list somewhere?
Right. And even if he's not in the top 10, which I don't think he would be in my top 10, not because I hate him, but just because of the fact that he really hasn't done the work. However, the work that he has done for the company with its standard, the Bloodline feud, when they had Sami Zayn in there, when they had Cody in there, and keeping that thing afloat. Hot damn for WWE. It's been a part of their transformation over the past year or 2 or 3. I don't know how he's not on the list, if not for technicality. Even though he would be in my top 100.
You put him on there with a star and say he doesn't meet the activity requirement, but it's Roman Reigns. It's the tribal chief. Acknowledge your tribal chief, EWI.
Well, they well, that's what it is. Now, as far as the top 10 goes, Gunther is another guy along that Punishment Martinez type of a track where you go, I see him as a star.
Yes.
I don't know if WWE sees him as a star. And then all of a sudden he sheds 50 pounds. He's, he's elevated his gimmick. Full stop. And then now he's World Heavyweight Champion, closing out in Berlin. Obviously, that wouldn't be a part of the list for this list. But yeah, he's been on the up. And that's good to see a good guy take it to the next level and, add his seasoning to what WWE offers. Kevin Owens is another guy that's been doing that for years. Same thing. We were nervous back then about how NXT guys transition to the main roster, and Owens is one of those guys that we weren't worried about. Gunther is one of those guys that I really don't worry about. And even Damian Priest had to put it all together to get it together. Part of that is Judgment Day. Part of that is good timing, but he still had to play a part, and goddamn it, he did it. Mystico. I don't know which one this one is.
Right.
So kudos. But obviously, if it was the guy that's Sin Cara, because there's like 5 of them, it would depend if it's who I think it is. Then hey, that makes sense. Because Botch Cara was a different guy,
right?
So cool. But as far as the top 10 goes, is there anybody that should have been that is in the top 10 that shouldn't be there other than Jon Moxley?
I was going to say probably Moxley for you at the very least.
Yeah. Now, granted, Moxley doesn't make my list. I think he's radioactive, but I'm not entirely sold on Seth Rollins being in the top 10. 20, maybe. Sure. 25,
number
definitely.
4 seems high for him.
But 4 seems a bit of a stretch.
I think Gunther should be higher and Seth Rollins should be lower when I look at that top 10 list.
And then now that I think about the time period, is MJF top 10? Even though he's 7th? Because wasn't he injured for a lot of that time?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, we had all the drama with
and then there was the All Out drama and stuff like that too.
Yeah.
I don't know. But either way, with MJF at 7, if he had to be in the top 10, which I don't know if he is, 7 makes more sense. But yeah, when we go through the rest of the list, then we could say what the top 10 looks like, because I definitely think some names should be absolutely higher.
All right, well, let's look at the rest. Any other people? Now, looking at the rest of the list, standouts. Right. What jumps out at you looking at like these? Like I said, there's 500 names on this thing.
Yes.
No.
Jay Uso 17. What? Like, I get the entrance, I get the gimmick, I get the selling of the Yeet merchandise, and I'm a fan. But 17? That's interesting. With LA Knight and Trick Williams being 27 and 28 respectively. Huh.
Yeah, that is a bit odd. I usually start at the bottom of the list and go up because I'm thinking of people that that I would think, well, hey, should they be higher? Maki Ito at 456 is interesting because of how hot she was maybe 2 years ago, and that has definitely cooled off on this side of the ocean.
Run it.
But then on that same lane, Lady Luck 454. Good on you. Hope it's higher next year, but hey, that's okay. And then of course there are a lot of people that you go, how come I don't see them on TV? Where are they working, or are you just watching all of the indie matches? Because Aaron Solo, for example, at 447, not it's I mean, if he meets the criteria, fine. Where is he working?
Yeah.
Right.
How do you get him at 447?
Yeah. I mean,
how do we have Fuego del Sol at 435? Like, where has he been since he left AEW?
On the indies, not on TV. But that's also a thing too. If I'm not watching it, I can't speak on it. But at 435, I'll take them at their word. You're good for them. Same thing with Billy Dixon, 428. Good on you. Hye-Yan Young, your Booker T's student of 411. That's another one, and I think that's also something to notice. I've named 2 women. Women can be on the list if they're not on a main roster somewhere. I think that's how that works. Only indie women can be on the list.
Yes. Highest woman this year is Jessica Troy at 98. I'm looking right now.
Really?
99.
Really?
99.
Okay.
Well, Maxie Impaler's 54.
That is a can of worms, sir, that I'm not going to open.
Yeah, you're right. Sorry. My apologies.
I think Jack Hartwell should be higher than 327. Personally, love that guy, and be damned if he shouldn't be on TV every week. But then again, that's also a thing too. It's hard to say to validate a thing because if you're kicking ass in NWA, that won't get you higher than 300. But if you're absolutely slumming it in TNA, that won't put you lower than 250.
I got the list of women who made the list. There's a good number of them.
Okay, good.
Here's the top ones as far as women. Like I said, Jessica Troy at 99. 106 was Rina Yamashita. Masha Slamovich at 118. Megan Bain at 139. Billy Starks at 150. Delta at 157. Charlie Evans at 222. Ring of Honor. She's in Ring of Honor.
The paywall, baby.
That's what I'm saying. Like if she's signed to a company, how is she on the list? Because if Billy Starks
she's still doing indies. She's still doing indies on the side.
Yeah, I was gonna say she's not exclusive to Ring of Honor, right?
Yeah.
I thought she was because if Billy Starks is on the list, then Athena should be on the list because she's doing indies also. Thunder Rosa is still doing indies.
Athena is not here.
Right. So,
yeah.
Okay.
So many. Yeah, again, this is one of those things. I would love to be in the war room where people are putting this list together, like a draft, and saying, "Yeah, no, put this person here." It's like, or is it just straight up AI generated now, where it's like, "Give me the top 500 wrestlers."
You absolutely know that room smells like wet farts and Mountain Dew Cold Red. And
hey, Code Red's not bad. Come on, man.
I'm just saying, it's no.
But that's another question. Is this by like PWI? Is this including people to make these decisions, or have we gone the route of AI?
There's a panel. They have a panel. Yes, that's how they claim they do it. And Lord knows, I can't even imagine the minutia that gets into. I mean, at some point, it's got to be there's just names, and you're just going like, okay, this one's 400, this one's 401, this one's 402. I mean, those upper rankings have got to just be throwing names on a list. It's got.
I do no, right, and I would say that actually the top 50 could be given some considerate thought.
Right.
The bottom 450 is just names on a list.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because if you're really telling me that
Henry's 51,
Jake Parnell had a slightly worse year than Minoru Suzuki, you've got to be kidding me. And if you don't know who Jake Parnell is, he also goes as Warhorse.
Yes.
There you go.
There's no way that at 131 Suzuki is a touch under Frankie Kazarian of all people and a touch above Warhorse and Jordan Oliver. Stop it. You pull these balls out of a hat.
On that note, let's wave the flag. Let's wave the flag and move on because we could go on forever on this thing. And it's a once a year thing. Soon enough, we'll have the women's 150 dropping and the tag team, I think 100 they do. So
yes,
more to come in the weeks and months to come from the fine folks at PWI with their lists that they like to make.
Logan Paul over Michael Oku.
Thank you. I was looking at that. Logan F and Paul.
Okay. Yeah, let's move on.
Let's switch gears because I know you wanted to get into this topic, Crab, with the state of TV media rights deal since AEW is, as we sit here tonight on this Thursday night, we still do not have an official announcement of a TV deal, though there's all this talk that the WB and them gotta be, it's a done deal. It just hasn't been, the fine points aren't worked out yet. But in 2024, the landscape's a changing. So I'm gonna throw this to you since you brought this up, because there's sports streaming services and all kinds of stuff going on. The landscape's a changing. So get in.
Right. So there are a lot of things that are happening right now, and as it relates to wrestling, AEW currently, as we know, doesn't have a deal done with a distribution service. There has been the rumors throughout the dirt sheets and traditional media and entertainment that a deal is done, big air quotes, with Warner Brothers. We don't know what the changes are going to be. We don't know when they start, but we do know that it's done. Also, AEW has filed a trademark for their show called AEW Shockwave.
Mm-hmm.
People believe and are reporting that that's a show that could wind up on one of the Fox networks. Mm-hmm. Fox movies were bought by Disney, but Fox Sports is still retained by News Corp and Rupert Murdoch and Fox. So it is possible that AEW Shockwave could pop up on Fox Sports, Fox Sports 1, your local Fox station, at some point in time during, during the week. Now, the rumor is with Shockwave is that that's another 2-hour show. I don't know in their current touring schedule where they're going to get the time to do that. Are they going to run concurrent roster? Are they going to split the roster if they have another 2-hour show? That's 6 hours. That's 7 hours a week between Collision, Dynamite, Shockwave, and Rampage, which still exists somehow. How will they make
Never mind Ring of Honor.
And then Ring of Honor.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah. So how do they how do they figure that out? Now, Ring of Honor, I believe, and I don't know if that's still the case, that they have an actual scheduled time frame, because shows can be 45 minutes, shows can be an hour and a half, shows can be an hour and change. So I don't know if they're still doing it that way, but it just a lot of questions. So if AEW does do a show for Fox Sports or in some capacity, and it is Shockwave, okay, fine. Now, of course, this comes on the back of WWE moving to Netflix, and we'll definitely talk about that later. This comes on the back of NXT moving to the CW. Also, if you're looking for SmackDown on Fox this Friday, don't look there, because they start on the USA Network this Friday.
Right.
So, all of these moving parts are happening with TV distribution between WWE and AEW. And then there's Venue. Venue is a sports streaming service that is a joint venture of ESPN, Fox Sports, and I want to say Turner Sports.
Yeah, Warner Brothers Discovery has a piece of it.
Right. So all three of them plan to come together to bring you all of their sports options with a suite of channels and, of course, live feeds of the sports that they carry. So ESPN definitely, trailing hurting all the load there. But then you'll have the NBA on ESPN. You'll have hockey on the Turner networks. AEW's got to follow it somewhere. Fox Sports is going to have some things, racing or whatever the hell Fox Sports carries, college football and stuff like that too during the season. And that's a thing that wants to happen until if the government allows it. The SEC, the Security and Exchange Commission, has shot down the merger or the creation of this over-the-top network because Fubo TV has sued or has filed an injunction to have this to stop this from happening because of the fact that they believe that it's anti-competitive and it's a whole antitrust thing, which personally makes sense. If you're going to herd all of the cats together, what do people do that want cats? yes, football will still be allowed to show sports, but squirrel wrestling at 4 a.m, because they were hoarding all of the other good sports.
Yeah, all the big stuff would be under the venue banner.
Would be under venue. Venue also is reported to be $43 a month.
Oof.
Which is a bitter pill to swallow.
Yeah, that's that ESPN.
And would also not include ESPN pay-per-view and Turner pay-per-view under the Zone or Fight or Triller or whatever the hell that is. So it would be the subscription on top of the pay-per-view. A lot of money to be asking for most of this American sports in under one basket. So how does this relate to AEW? Well, we don't know what the deal is. We do believe that this is now tinfoil hat time.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say Dynamite stays in place. Let's say that Collision stays in place on Saturday. And let's say that Shockwave is another 2-hour show that moves earlier in the week because all of their shows happen from Wednesday to Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
So that is rife for them to have a show Monday. Got to remember, Raw is gone. Come the first of the year.
Right.
So with Raw leaving television, going to Netflix, not the same thing, but with Raw leaving television and whatever that's going to look like, this would be the perfect time for AEW to move in there and fill that cultural void with another show. I don't know why that show has to be Shockwave. I think realistically it could be Rampage because realistically Friday night at 10 p.m. ain't it. And since they are not competing with SmackDown per se, because traditional television versus cable is two different lists. And then, of course, Netflix versus traditional cable is two different lists.
Yeah.
I think that Monday would be a good time to fill that void because that's been a thing on television since 1991. Go ahead, Will.
Okay, here's my question. If they do that, if Shockwave's a thing, where does it land? We're all talking about Fox, of course. People are like, oh my God, WWE loses SmackDown on Fox. Wouldn't it be something if AEW ended up with a show on Fox? I can't imagine that's going to happen. That's just too big of a deal. But Fox has a lot of places. It could be an FS1 show.
That's what I'm thinking.
FS2. The other possibility in this mix, Fox owns Tubi. If they want it on a streaming property, there was talk before of MLW getting on Tubi, and that deal fell apart for different reasons. So Tubi did have an interest in wrestling at one point. And Lord knows, Tubi has the advantage of Tubi's free. So just got, commercial supported, but as far as a streaming property goes, because I think a lot of people are automatically assuming, well, AEW, WB, we've talked about forever, get the pay-per-views on Max. Yeah. Of course, Max is a paywall, though. It's a subscription service. To me, this would be some appeal to Tubi with the idea that no subscription. Anyone can get it. Just got to get the app. No thoughts.
So in response to the Fox thing in general, I think Fox could be a thing, not because they don't want wrestling. It's not something that Fox has to produce. They only have to distribute it. They have, and then of course with AEW, the synergy between Fox Sports and wrestling is something that just makes a whole buttload of sense. So for Fox, it's an upside because they get 2 hours of maybe let's just say they 500,000, which is doable for AEW. And getting AEW in front of more people on an over-the-air network, which reaches 99% of America, is a win for AEW. Getting something that's cheap to produce, that's going to get you 500,000 eyes in the on TV every week is a win for Fox. So is it supposed to compete with Raw? We don't count that. Raw went the way of Howard Stern. And again, I'm dating myself, but when Howard Stern went to satellite, only a third of his audience went with him.
Went with him. Yeah.
Because people said, I didn't pay for this for 20 years. Why would I pay for this now?
Right.
If you have cable, you're not paying for cable for Raw. Why would you pay for Netflix on top of cable, assuming that you don't have it already? And I know that it's culturally a thing to have Netflix. It's a thing that you do now. You Netflix and chill, but not everybody has it.
I don't.
I'm
not. And to your point, like you guys are talking, and the more I'm hearing about the paywall services And now we're starting to see wrestling in other paywall of honor type setups. As a fan who grew up watching Superstars Wrestling Challenge on regular basic ass television,
WCW
Saturday
Worldwide.
morning.
WCW Worldwide,
Yep.
it's like, wait a minute. At what point do you as a wrestling fan say, I ain't gonna keep paying for this? I'll catch the highlights on the internet.
Yeah, just
Or
for weekly TV. Yeah.
Right.
Hulu.
Or Hulu.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
Now,
I
here's
think
the
Will's
question.
Tubi thing, I think Will's Tubi suggestion actually is genius because you'll get more eyes and they don't gotta pay for it. It harkens back to the pivot of when we were younger, as we started this broadcast, about just taking it back to basics. Put it on some place where people can watch it. You'll pull some new fans, and maybe if you decide to switch it up after the contract's up, you can bring some of those fans with you. But as it stands right now, I'm sorry, I don't want to get Netflix just so I can watch Raw.
Right.
You know, I'm the guy that makes the joke here about finding crack streams and just doing it that way. Like, I'm still gonna do that because it's for me. We talk about cutting the cord, right? That was the whole thing behind all these pay services. Cut the cord.
Yeah. Pay for what
Why
you
are
want.
we
It's all
back
a
to
la carte.
cable being cheaper again with all these services? And that antitrust you brought up earlier, Jamal. Like, I found out about that this morning. And you know what? I'm glad they have this to stop this from being a monopoly so quickly with the big three in terms of sports networks, because even I don't watch ESPN anymore. So enough is enough, to quote Owen Hart. Enough is enough, and it's time for a change. So is it pivoting the opposite direction where wrestling fans say, look, I'm not paying for any more? If you're on the channels I got, cool. If not, I'll catch the highlights somewhere else.
Well, culturally, that depends on, and we'll definitely pick this up later, but culturally, it depends on the type of fan you are. If you're in the WWE bubble, where traditionally, just from as a cultural perspective, you're not really allowed to venture outside of that bubble, then yeah, you're going to pay for Netflix. My aunt out there in Oklahoma, God bless her, she does not watch anything other than WWE. And because she's been out in Oklahoma for the last 30 years, she sounds like him. And she keeps telling me, I like the Jimmy Uso because he says yeet. And I had to help her with the sign up for Netflix over the phone this week because Raw is coming and she needs it. Right. That's a lot of people that only consume WWE.
Yeah.
AEW has a younger, arguably smarter, broader audience that is aware of other wrestling promotions from around the world. So if I lose AEW, is that a bigger deal to me than a WWE fan losing Raw? No, because I'm aware of the indies. I'm aware of Japan. I'm aware of GLEAT in China. I'm aware of Setup Pro Wrestling in Thailand, and so on. I'm good to go. Oh, and rest in peace, Soft Ground. But I'm good to go. As far as Fox goes, it still comes down to the money. WWE signed $1 billion deal with Netflix. Fox said, we don't have you promised us ratings and you didn't deliver. We're not going to pay $1 billion for SmackDown. All right, cool. We move it back to NBC.
Yeah.
If AEW is not going to demand $1 billion from Fox for a deal, but if they can get something that's in their range and something that's in the range of what Fox is willing to pay, it's another win. I'm not saying that that's the deal that has to happen because, again, you say Tubi. Well, Pluto TV is owned by CBS. Why wouldn't that deal happen?
Service. There you go.
It's another service that is a thing that's embedded in people's TVs now.
Yep.
So why wouldn't it show up on the Roku channel? These are things that they can do, but it's just about how much money they're going to give for it, for the rights for it, and over the length of time. I don't see Fox paying $1 billion for AEW like they were asked to for WWE. That's insane.
Yeah.
But if you can tell me, maybe $150 million a year for 5 years, that's doable. And that's arguably more money than Turner was willing to shut out, because I heard that they were only in the low $100 million range.
Yeah. I think the key thing I keep looking at this is, we heat up, TBS and TNT have been the home of AEW. And I just keep thinking cable channels are just, it's 2024 now, and this stuff is changing so
they're being
quick.
Suffocated like Daniel Bryan.
Yeah. Yes. It's like, I keep looking and I think, WWE has been very smart about being like, They don't have all their eggs in one basket. The pay-per-views are on Peacock. They got one show on cable on USA, and then they've had another show on free over-the-air television. So they've been at all places, streaming, cable, and old school antenna TV. And I think the modern version of that's going to be have your streaming, maybe have your cable or something over the air TV. But of those three, old school cable is going to be the first one that's going to fall.
Yeah.
So how long this lasts with your TBSs and TNTs and USAs of the world, or they eventually convert to just streaming channels, which is probably what will happen.
Which is exactly what's going to happen. Out west, Spectrum. Well, not just out west, because Spectrum's everywhere. Yeah. But Spectrum has announced a deal with HBO Max that's going to put HBO Max in their cable boxes.
Yeah.
So, you're just moving one hand from money from the left pocket to the right pocket. That's what it is nowadays.
At the end of the day, it's all going to be streaming. At the end of the day, once we get there.
At the end of the day, the rich will continue to nickel and dime us to get richer.
One way or another.
One way or another. Mm-hmm.
All right. Yeah. We'll be following this, though, because Lord knows the week that the TV deal is announced, I'm sure people are going to go through that thing with a fine-tooth comb and be breaking down all the specifics of what lands
season
where.
Premiere season right now.
Yeah.
It's mid-September. They gotta move.
Yeah. It's got to be coming soon. It's got to be coming soon. It's just a matter of when. So we'll find out soon enough. And WWE's all their stuff's in flux right now. USA right now is getting to brag for the next 3 weeks that they are the home of all things WWE, since all the shows for the next 3 weeks are on USA Network until the CW move. So interesting times. Interesting times. There we go. All right. Well, we went extra long tonight. We had all kinds. We had to break down that PWI 500. So
we? But we did. Yeah, we did.
Yeah. We did. We had to get that in there. So it is what it is, folks. Thanks for being here with us each and every Thursday night. Your Big Gold Belt Wrestling Podcast is here live streaming, talking all the pro wrestling action every Thursday night at 8 p.m. You can find us at all kinds of places on the social media at Big Gold Belt across the board. As far as the live stream, Twitter, it's X, I gotta call it. Instagram, no, wait, no.
We're never calling it X.
Yeah. YouTube and Twitch and X is where the live stream happens each and every week. Podcast form drops shortly thereafter. So if you're just looking for the audio, you can find the show on all your favorite podcasting platforms. Also, BigGoldBelt.com, the website for all your wrestling, movies, comics, and more material. We don't have the boss man here this week to talk about the entertainment side of things, but Big Gold Belt Media is much more than just wrestling. We have our sneak preview of the Queen of Villains on there already, since that's about to drop on Netflix, the Dump Matsumoto biopic. We're waiting for word on the Mr. McMahon doc, because that's coming soon too at the end of the month. We might have to do a special episode just on that thing.
We might have to.
So we know that's coming soon. So Big Gold Belt Media, your one-stop shop for wrestling, movies, comics, and more. So check it out, BigGoldBelt.com and at Big Gold Belt across the board on all social media. Thanks for being with us here this week, folks. We will be back next Thursday night, and we hope you are too. Until then, watch some wrestling, maybe do some streaming.
Don't pay for it.
Check out the PWI 500 and all that good stuff. We'll talk to y'all later, folks. Thanks for stopping by.